Hi everyone, welcome back to Crafting with Slavie. In today's video, we'll be making this shutter card, which was inspired by Maureen Simon. The way that she did one of her cards, it was just so cute. It looked like the Bear family was having story time, and then when you opened it up, it had the content of the story. So that is what inspired me to make this card. In our case, it's the Bear family coming back, and they are having a cozy evening and they're reading stories about Santa and Mrs. Claus and their adventures in the North Pole. So I started off with embossing my sentiment. I used gold embossing powder and I just stamped it in the middle of the card using the Shutter Card Holiday Sayings. And I used gold embossing powder from Ranger to heat emboss it, just because I'm a sucker for gold embossing powder during Christmas. Silver and gold, really. And in the case of this card, because it was Santa, I wanted to have a splash of red in the card. And then it also gave me an opportunity, my previous shutter card video, which I will link in the card on the top right here. I used die cuts to create hillsides and whatnot. And I had mentioned that I was waiting for my stencils to come in. Well, my stencils came in. So I'm super excited because I got to use them here. And I was using the hillside stencils for the ground. And I started with the middle panel, which is the shutter card add-on. And I just used like a basic hillside stencil to create that nice little arch. And then I lined it up on the card and I took this other stencil that I'm working with, and you can see me doing it here, and I made sure that where the stenciling ends on the add-on is where I pick it up on the actual shutter card base so that it looks pretty seamless. And I didn't stop there. I decided to use the same stencil. I tried to use the third one, but it didn't work out. And I created another hill. And the reason for this is because I had a lot of trees to add, and I love that type of dimension that you get with that. So then what I did is I reversed the stencil because I wanted to use the cloudy stencil to then add my sky. And I didn't want this to be a night sky. A lot of my holiday cards have been featuring night skies, and I wanted something that was daytime, just to switch it up a little bit and to challenge myself. I feel like I've been resorting to the night sky because it's easier in a lot of ways, and it is more magical, especially because then you get to add things like hot foiling and whatnot. But I wanted to challenge myself with creating a daytime scene. So I kept rotating the stencil as I went. And you can see here that I actually grabbed the wrong brush. Whoopsie. But it's okay, you can barely tell, so it's all good. And I kept rotating the stencil. And when it came time to do the add-on panel, I took the stencil and I tried to match it up. At first on the left-hand side, then on the right-hand side, and I just went down that way. And when I ran out of things to match it up to, because I was kind of angling the clouds up towards the middle, I guess, I just kind of went nuts towards the bottom and just filled it in. It ended up working out really well. It looked like it belonged together, which made me really happy. And then I did remove it from my finished panel before I started doing the ink blending, because otherwise, well, one, I didn't want it to get on the panel because it would create a line, and I didn't want that. But also, I didn't want there to be that stenciling in the center of the shutter card because I wanted to ink blend it a different color. And you'll see that in a little bit. This is a bit of a tedious process. I left this in here just so you guys could really see how much work is involved in doing this. It wasn't bad. I honestly didn't notice how long it was taking until I went to go edit this video, and then I was like, this took a huge chunk of this. If you would like, I learned a new trick, and I have added some navigation timestamps in the description along with all of the links. So if you are interested in skipping around on my videos, go right ahead and check that out. While you're there, hit subscribe and the notification bell. Hit the like button as well. Pardon my head there. And you can kind of bounce around and get whatever ideas you're looking for the easy way that way. Okay, so what I was doing there is I just took the add-on, I lined it up with my panel, and I drew a really light pencil mark around the center because I just wanted that red stuff, red ink, pardon me, to be right in the center. And then when that was done, I needed to do the little flaps. So I kind of did the same thing, but I kind of had to guesstimate here because there is a flap that you adhere to the card for these flaps. It's a lot of flaps. And I had to kind of guesstimate where the fold for that would be on the card. It ended up working out really well for me, but if you do struggle with it, I would almost say to fold the flap so you can really see where it's gonna go, and then unfold it before you start ink blending. So like use it to attach your stencil to the little flap and then unfold it before you ink blend so you don't have those harsh lines. But once you fold it, you are gonna have a bit of a line, but I mean, we're using tumbled glass distress ink, so it should be fine. You're not gonna have that harsh line. Oh, speaking of inks, so the hills were blueprint sketch. The clouds were tumbled glass. And now we're working on the front panel. My apologies, I do not have the dimensions. I believe it was 3.5 by 4 7/8 is what it ended up being. And I cut that separate. There's no die to cut this. And then I went in with this basic hillside again, and I blocked off the top, and I'm going to block off the bottom as well. But I started with the bottom because I wanted to do my ground first. And I used fired brick and aged mahogany on that. And then I wanted to switch up my greens because I have a tendency to always use the same colors for my ink blends. So I shot this video, and I actually shot 4 videos in a 48-hour time period, and I really played around with the distress inks, guys. Like, it was really, really exciting for me because I used combinations that I hadn't used before. So the wall was actually cracked pistachio and evergreen bow. Who knew? All right, so I'm going to take a step back and let you watch the Copic coloring, as I always do, and I will be back shortly. Okay, I'm back to talk about the yellow elephant in the room, aka the splotch of yellow ink on my tree. When I was taking out my yellow markers, one of them fell on top of the tree and left this blob, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to try and work with it because it's yellow. Yellow's in green, so hopefully it'll work. It actually ended up covering up quite well, and if that wasn't enough, when I assemble the card, I will point out to you where I put this tree to hide it even further. Okay, taking a step back. So now that all the coloring is done, I am taking out this funky looking die that comes in the Den Sweet Den die cuts, and it cuts out the arms of the bear. And I like to do this after I've finished with the coloring because I don't want it, I just feel like I would have a really hard time coloring around the die cutting, even though I will have to give it a try at some point because I'm finding that not having that white edge around the arms when the bear is holding something is starting to really bother me. So I will definitely explore that in the future. For the sentiment, I actually used two different stamp sets. I used Ho Ho Holidays for the Merry Christmas and Den Sweet Den for the rest of it. I think it's from Our Den to Yours. And yeah, so I used three different stamp sets, I guess, to do my greetings for this card, which I'm okay with because you can never have enough greetings. Full disclosure, there's one card that I totally forgot about the greeting. I'm not going to tell you which one. You're just going to have to watch and see. And so back to the assembly. So I'm taking a bit of a different approach than in the previous card that I made as the shutter card. And I attached the front panel first because I had a really hard time attaching it after all of this stuff was attached on the inside of the card. And from there, I am using score tape to attach the pieces on the inside. And this is, again, it's part of my scrapbooking brain. I just really like using score tape when it comes to these types of flaps. It is a really nice, strong adhesive. I don't like to use it in my general card making because I feel like liquid glue just does just fine. But for whatever reason, whenever there's flaps involved, I have to use score tape. I don't know. Okay, so when you're putting this together, make sure that you overlap these. So for example, the top right little flappy thing goes over top, the bottom right will go underneath the one on the left. And the reason you want to do this is so that it looks nice when you close it. Otherwise it kind of starts looking a little funny, and you can tell, once you're aware of it, you can tell when people don't do that in their cards. So here's my bear with the cut apart arms, and I have, I'm calling her the mama bear. I'm having her hold the book that she is reading to the younglings, and Daddy Bear and one of the baby bears is taking a nap in the background. And I'm using a new product here, which is those foam squares over on the right. This is my first time using them, and I actually became aware of their existence. Well, partially because I'm an avid Amazon shopper. Shh, don't tell anybody. And partially because I love Kathy Zielski, and I recently watched her craft space tour, and she's got like a huge collection of them, and I decided, you know what, I wonder if that'll help me zen out a little bit more in my card making when I'm not cutting apart my foam tape every time I need to adhere stuff to these tiny little die cuts. And I gotta tell you, it helps. Like, okay, so this is gonna be a new thing. I have them in the 1/4 inch as well as the 1/2 inch size. And I want to talk a little bit about this. So if you ever get to a point, I lay out all my cards before I start adhering things to the card, but for whatever reason when I laid it out, I did not notice that this stack with the lamp either blocked my sentiment or it blocked the sleeping bear's faces. And that ain't okay. So what you can do is you can actually cut elements off. And because I don't like wasting product, I put the foam squares back onto the sheet, and I use the mouse square in this card. So I just cut off that book. I probably could have cut off 2 of them, but one did okay. And I attached it that way, and it made it better. I'm not gonna say that it made it perfect, but it definitely made it better, so you can still see the sub-sentiment as well as the bear's faces. Alright, and then the rest of the objects in the foreground I attached using foam squares. And these are 2mm thick foam squares. These little foam squares I also picked up in the thin version. I'm going to link them below. However, be warned, I can't actually figure out which ones are which. I just kind of ordered all of them on a subscribe and save because I figure, hey, I make a lot of cards. I'm going to go through these. But I honestly don't know which ones are which. But if you're like me, they're not that expensive, so you could try all of them, or maybe try ordering one to see which one shows up, and then that way you'll know. For me, it's fine because I make a lot of cards. All right. So before we do all of the stuff on the inside, because again, bulk, I am attaching my strings to the inside of my card. And I'm using score tape to attach them, and then I'm going in with liquid glue, and I cut out these panels. So we're using that same measurement. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact measurement, 3.5 by 4 7/8, I think. And we're cutting it in half on the 3.5-inch side. So it ends up being, I can't math. Let's pretend I came up with a number and it was the right amount. Half of 3.5. And then I started putting in the things. So that's the tree that I spoke about earlier that had the yellow blob on it. And I tucked it in underneath, so you won't be able to see it to really scrutinize it, which helped with my OCD. And then I started attaching all the little things. Now, let's talk a little bit about these inside flaps. So it is perfectly okay to have your little critters overlapping the add-on piece in the center there. However, it is not okay if they overlap the flaps. So you see how Santa's hat is overlapping the flaps a little bit? What I had to do to properly close this card is bend his hat a little bit, and it's fine because it's just a very small amount, and it ended up working out for the card. But if you are going to make a card and you want to put stuff in the middle and you need to kind of space it out a little bit because the cookies and the milk are taking up too much space, make sure you put it down lower. Now, one of the other reasons why I really enjoy doing a scene card on the front is because, for example, the sleigh is too big to fit on this panel. However, if I put it there on the right or even on the left, depending on what you want to do and how you want to lay it out, you can have that overlap onto like the dead space or the green space there. Just whatever you want to do. And then I went about attaching all of the trees, and I reached a point where I could attach no more trees. So I decided that I was going to use the green space to the left to finish off with the trees. And I actually really like it. I think it adds a little something to the whole picture. So I was quite happy with that choice. And I don't know if you noticed in the coloring, but that's actually Rudolph. That's right, Rudolph. Yep. All right, now we are reaching the end of this video. I want to thank you so much for watching. I know this was a bit of a longer one. And if you liked what you saw, please hit the like button. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Hit the notification bell, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. There is also some links at the very end, so please make sure you check them out. There's a link to the rest of my holiday card series and whatever YouTube recommends for you. Thanks so much for joining me. Have a good day.